right, well, we have a pretty good contingent of leaders here. So I will go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining, however early or late it is for you. I just wanted to give a quick shout out of introductions. We have a number of new leaders since I believe our last meeting in March. So I'm just going to do sort of a quick little shout out, David from Minter Ellison, who has joined us for the trade group. We have Jason from Loch Lord, who has joined us for banking and finance. Several of these are within the last 2 weeks, by the way. Rebecca with Taylor Vessing, who has helped us launch the compliance and investigations group along with Carla. Hi, Carla at Tazzini. And have I missed anyone else on the call that is new? I think that's, oh, Joe.
Yeah.
No, I talk to you so often, I totally overlooked that you're a new leader.
It's all right. It's all right.
Joe, who has transitioned from the Business Development Committee chair to now the America's Corporate Transactions co-chair. Now, did I miss anyone else? Okay. I think that's everyone on the call. We do have a couple of other new leaders, but I think on the call. So I had Tori put together a practice group leader directory. On the website, you all belong to a forum and you could go into the forum and find anyone's contact information. But at the moment, it does not show which group you are a leader of. I'll get to our website in a couple of agenda items, but for now we have a PGL directory, which I will tag to the practice group leaders forum on the sidebar that I have linked to this agenda, which is a photo directory sorted by practice group of all the leaders so that you know who the other leaders are, which will be helpful in the future when we're trying to plan things with other groups so that you know who the other leaders are, and just, you know, when we get on these calls, you know who will be joining us ahead of time. The next item on the agenda is a practice group leader handbook. This used to be called the toolkit, but I've sort of rebranded it since it's something new. We scratched the toolkit altogether and sort of redid this handbook for a number of reasons. The toolkit was developed many years ago. It's time to update it. We sort of piecemealed updates as activities and things around the world, such as COVID, dictated us to do so. And so we completely revamped that, which I think it's a lot easier now to understand the role of your leadership position without all of the fluff. So if you have not had a chance to take a look at that, please do so. Like I said, that is new. Some of the things that I outline there really are the goals and purpose of groups, the leadership structure, which, as most of you should know, all of the groups we try to have at least 3 leaders for, one from each region in the world. Americas, EMEA, and Asia Pacific are the 3 regions for World Law Group purposes. And so that really sets up the group so that not one person has to take on the role or have all of the burden for managing a group, especially when we do projects, which, you know, Surnath could attest to with the venture capital guide, was quite an undertaking, and Ellen, that we were able to sort of divide up the guide in terms of, you know, proofreading, gathering the content, that sort of thing, leading meetings. Some of the groups, like the privacy group, for example, they run their meetings on a regional schedule so that it changes the time throughout the year and who runs the meeting. So it really just sort of spreads out the leadership responsibilities among 3 or 4 people instead of just having one person do that. Planning activities and initiatives sort of is a big one for group leaders. You know, working with me when there's a meeting to plan an agenda, a well thought out agenda, which I'll get to next. Facilitating discussion among group members, whether that's in the meeting or via email. Some groups have been using the listserv to sort of start a conversation and get folks talking about what's happening in their jurisdiction. member outreach, inviting others to speak at meetings and participate in guides. The directory on each of the practice group pages is really helpful for this because you can go to your practice group page, find a member there if there's a particular jurisdiction that you're looking to sort of highlight or that something's happening for a meeting that you could reach out to and invite them. Identifying business development opportunities among our members, and sort of just generally making them feel welcome. Suganti is really great. I'm calling out Suganti here. So in group meetings, Suganti is really great about going around the horn and, if somebody hasn't chimed in, asking them, hey, what about, in China, how are things over there? And as a group leader, that's something that I really encourage you to do in these meetings, that if somebody hasn't chimed in or if there's a new member on the call, making them feel welcome. Does anybody have any questions about that handbook if you've had a chance to look at it, or any feedback?
I thought it was excellent.
Anybody want to step down from their role after receiving it?
I didn't say I would follow it. I just said it was excellent.
I appreciate that, Louis. He makes jokes, but Louis is very good about reaching out to the members of his group. He's a cannabis group leader. Okay, if you do have any feedback, feel free to send that my way. I will share this separately in an email so that you have it. This will be posted as well on the Practice Group Leaders Forum page, which you are all a part of. You just log in under committees and groups. You would select the Practice Group Leaders Forum, and that's where you would find the handbook, the PGL directory, and anything else applicable to this forum. The next thing that I wanted to do was talk about some group initiatives, and I'm going to try to share my screen, and I may not be successful because it's a video, and sometimes my Zoom is not super friendly to me sharing videos, but let's try it. Okay. Can you guys see the video? It says compliance investigations update from Argentina. Okay. Now let's see if it actually plays and you can hear it. I'm just going to play a short clip of a video that Guillermo recently did.
One, I would like to thank the Compliance and Investigation Practice Group of the World Law Group for inviting me to share recent enforcement trends in Argentina affecting our practice. Today, I would like to share a few lessons arising from the recent conviction of Lázaro Báez, one of the closest business associates of former presidents of Argentina, Néstor and Cristina Kirchner. Báez was recently convicted to 12 years of imprisonment for laundering the proceeds of corruption in obtaining public contracts and for laundering the proceeds of tax fraud.
Okay. So I hope everyone was able to see and hear that. I just wanted to show everyone that clip in case they hadn't had a chance to look at it. So the Compliance and Investigations Group, which I told you is a new group this year, has started this video series where they're just doing these sort of short 5-minute clips about something happening in their jurisdiction. Guillermo talked about this recent case. It's only 5 minutes. I wouldn't make those videos any longer. But we received really good feedback from folks on those videos, and other groups now want to start doing them. So that's just one of the ideas for group initiatives. I know a lot of us do regular meetings. There's a lot to talk about, so the meetings are really helpful. A couple of groups are working on some guides right now, or we're talking about some guides in the works. But I just wanted to offer that as an alternative to doing a meeting or doing something that's as cumbersome as a guide, because these are sort of individual. Guillermo worked with his own IT and marketing folks to put that together. We sent him the World Law Group logo and he added that into the video, and we would be more than happy to help you put something like that together or do some sort of podcast using Zoom. And of course, I welcome any other ideas that you guys might have for initiatives. Has anybody thought about anything over the last few weeks, I know I've met with a number of you outside of this forum. Have any of you thought of anything sort of unique or interesting that might be something the groups could do in World Law Group? Quiet, we have birds chirping in the background. The other thing that I think I've talked
Hannah,
about.
it's Ted. Sorry.
Hi, Ted.
Hi. I'm sure that the privacy group could put something together. There are a number of changes and trends that I'm sure we could do a short video on. What I didn't get a sense of, just because I think you didn't play it long enough, was, are these supposed to be discrete clips from each region or country, or did you expect more of an integrated presentation?
So the one that Guillermo did and that the compliance group is doing, they are each country doing their own individual. There are no rules. It's not a one size fits all sort of, I mean, there are rules, but it's not a one size fits all thing. So if you guys wanted to do a short video clip on something that integrates multiple countries, or that's, the entire EU or Asia Pacific, absolutely, I would encourage that. It doesn't have to be country by country. It could be a topical, 5-minute video or discussion or podcast. We welcome whatever ideas or whatever fits for each group.
That's great. We've got a meeting coming up. Maybe we should just add that to the agenda.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? I see somebody has a question, which I'll get to in just a moment. The other thing I did want to mention is the sort of rolling Q&A. So I know we talked about this in the March meeting. The employment group, it's HR. The HR group did a Q&A on the vaccine and requirements for returning to work. And that has sort of progressed from, we're now a year since they started that guide. Obviously, things have changed, countries have started mandating vaccines, that sort of thing. So we've done that as sort of a rolling Q&A, where anytime a country has an update or somebody wants to add, we've added questions to the Q&A, and we continually publicize that. And we've gotten a lot of, which I should have included here, and I did not, some information from JD Supra in terms of the reads that we've had. That is one thing that I did forget to add to this, but JD Supra is the content syndicator that we partner with to get our content out. And we've had a lot of reads for that guide, specifically for the venture capital guide as well. We publish it as a whole guide online, and we share it as a whole guide, but we also share the individual countries. And every time those are updated, we reshare those again. We share them on social media, and they've gotten quite a bit of traction. We've gotten a number of requests for additional information or clarity on things from folks who have been reading these individual chapters, which I think is really great. So that's also something, to consider. This started out being, a short 3-question guide. I think we're now up to 8 or 9 questions, Suganti. I'm not even sure right now, but it's, it's similar in how we're doing our country by country guides for anything else. It was just really quick, and we constantly update it. So we have been working on that format for the updated data breach guide as well, which we hope to have the majority of those posted by the end of the year. So that's something else to consider. If there's something that's, ever changing type of thing, we can easily put those together, and they're all online. There's not, a PDF that we're circulating or anything like that. It's just something we update online.
Hannah,
Yes.
if I may, you 2 or 3 times you pointed out that these initiatives are getting some traction.
Mm-hmm.
Could you put some numbers on that? I mean, does that mean like 9 people? My mother-in-law is watching me, or are we getting tens of thousands of viewers clamoring for more?
And this is where I had mentioned JD Supra. It's not 9 people. I mean, it's in the tens of thousands that we're getting in terms of reads on our content on JD Supra. And you know what? I will pull something together and circulate after the meeting, just like a screenshot of sort of statistics from JD Super, which I meant to include in here and I forgot, but that's a great question, Louis. And Tori has, I mean, these statistics change, of course, daily, but Tori has put this together. I know it was part of maybe the spring summit, Beth, that she had initial statistics from JD Supra. But I will put something together and circulate that because they are pretty impressive numbers and we will continue to partner with them in 2022 as well.
Hey, Hannah, can I jump in for a sec?
Yes.
Just Louis, to your point, one of the things I've noticed, when we're posting through World Law Group is it kind of has a multiplicative effect because all of our respective networks are touching it. So I know that when I post something, a piece of content through my LinkedIn, I'm usually getting a couple thousand. I mean, I think we really could potentially see some pretty big numbers depending on how we promote the content through our respective networks and then tie it back to the JD Supra World Law Group platform.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, we're getting tens of thousands. That's fabulous because like Jonathan, when I write one of my articles, it's maybe you get 3,000 to 4,000, that's a good read.
I also hope that your mother is reading your stuff, Louis.
He said it was his mother-in-law. I want to be clear about that.
Mother-in-law, that's
Yeah,
right.
my mother gives me a thumbs up.
Someone did send a message in the chat asking if there were more general topics that World Law Group might wish to address, such as diversity, mental health, going back to the office after the pandemic. And I call that question out because the HR group has a meeting on Tuesday next week. I think it's at the same time slot. I'd have to double check. But I do think that some of those topics are ones that they plan to address in that meeting for discussion. And I think that is probably a good opportunity to create additional content based on that meeting for some of those topics.
That would be great. I am involved with another group, the International Trademarks Association, and I'm on the live programming subcommittee. We actually had a session yesterday on LGBTQT issues that was a first for INTA. And so there seemed to be a lot of interest in that, sort of taking some of the diversity and inclusion topics and really drilling down and how those are handled. It was very North American specific. So that might be something again with the HR group. And if they want representation from other groups, I'd be happy to help out with some of the contacts we've made.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that would be sort of cross groups that, we could get multiple groups involved. And it's interesting that you mentioned that sort of North American centric. So earlier this year with the marketing and business development professionals, we did talk about diversity inclusion and sort of what programs folks had. And there were a lot of firms where they say, yes, it's now basically required, when we're putting together RFPs, client pitches, that sort of thing, they require us to show sort of proof of what we do on that front. And then there were other certain regions of the world where it hasn't become as prevalent or as important for clients and they don't see it on. And I think it is very regionally based, but will of course be something that I think all firms eventually will have to be thinking about, in terms of initiatives and what they're doing. Any other suggestions or ideas? Okay. I think
Hannah, one thing, Per here. It's easy now for me to say because I'm not part of the HR group, but if we are seeing that kind of traction around this rolling Q&A format, that I actually I like, and I think we should make use of in other groups. What kind of efforts are the group doing to actually add countries to participate or provide info? Because I scrolled down the list or the link that you sent on this specific issue, and it's far from the whatever 60 plus jurisdictions that we are representing that have actually contributed. It's a little bit just of a hint to the group that if we're already seeing that kind of traction, we should perhaps make an effort of expanding, pushing the firms who have not contributed, mine, for example.
Yes, so that's a good question, Per. And I will say we started out with only a handful of countries, and FOMO was sort of, the fear of missing out was what got others interested. Like, oh, how do I get in that? And I, at least probably 4 or 5 times this year have reached out to all firms. When we initially did it, if a firm hadn't submitted, I sent an email saying, hey, you haven't contributed to this. Are you interested? But I do think that is something that we probably need to work on from a leadership perspective in these initiatives is the individual outreach and sort of the inclusion of those firms who don't participate or haven't participated or maybe overlooked my emails because they get 100 emails from me a year. But that's a great question. And I think something that as leaders, we need to focus on. And I do, in the guide, you see outreach is one of the things. And I think that is one of the things that a lot of groups struggle with is that individual member outreach. But that's a great question. And I would suggest, when we did, Harold was great with the merger control guide. I'm not sure how they broke it up, but I think he did a lot of outreach, which took a lot of time. I mean, it was probably 1.5 years in the making of doing that guide, doing the updated version of that guide, doing his individual outreach, which, this is why we have 3 leaders for each of the groups. And I would encourage that when we do these, and a lot of this is also on me, right? Like, here's the list of folks that have contributed. Here's the list of contacts who haven't contributed that we can reach out to. And this is a great question, which leads in, I'm sort of jumping around the agenda because a lot of these items tie together. So right now, we do have these directories on the website on the individual pages that you could go to your practice group page and you could search by country, by firm, by name, whatever, for the members in your group. We are upgrading the website to add some features that will be more useful tools, I think, for the practice group leaders, where we'll have a directory on one place you can search. We'll be able to see who all of those members are right there in alphabetical order by name, country, whatever. That will help us with the outreach and being able to follow up with folks who haven't participated in things. Does anyone have any sort of thoughts on? That's probably the most time-consuming part of, I think, being a leader is that outreach. I'm more than happy to help with that and facilitate and make introductions, but I think it's really important as leaders for you guys to sort of be the face of the group. And I think that probably is, and those of you who have done guides or, even webinars where you've had to do the outreach, that's probably the biggest time consumer for you as a leader.
Yes.
Juan knows.
Yes. No, the only thing that I want to mention is that in the case of my group, the infrastructure and PPP, I need to admit that we have been certain difficulties to reach all members within the group, even though we try and we propose several topics which are of relevance. And well, I don't know, maybe I'm aware of the fact that there is an energy group. So one of the ideas that I mentioned to Hannah some time ago is that it might make sense to merge those groups eventually, or see if we can, because I sent several emails to the people in the list that Hannah is mentioned, and I honestly did not receive any answer. So I'm curious about if still there is a need for having a separate infrastructure and PPP group, or we should merge with the energy group. That's one of the ideas. Or eventually, now that we are having a representative for another jurisdiction like Asia, which has just jumped into the group, it may be good fostering the group. But the truth is that it has been difficult. It has been difficult. Anyway. That's the one that I want to mention because it's a lot of work, and honestly I want to have, but I want to have on an efficient way. So I don't know, maybe merging with the energy group makes sense, but that's something that we'll probably discuss in Lisboa or whatever.
I think that's something that, with our reporting, which will be better with the new website and the CMS, where we can have all of that information. Right now, we sort of, we have been evolving in the technologies that we, as a team use and that our members use. And one of those is our contact management system, which isn't great right now, but with the new website will be, and we'll be able to sort of track all that in one place. And it'll be easier for me and for the staff team to go through and say, okay, the IP group has had 4 meetings this year, and we've only had 10 firms participate. And then that gives us the opportunity to say, okay, let's break up among the IP3 leaders, the list of contacts, of key contact partners for those firms that haven't participated, to say, hey, you have folks in the group or you don't have folks in the group. We just did this with compliance, which is a newly launched group. But I basically went through and I emailed all of the KCPs and I copied the appropriate regional leader, so I sent all of the Asia individual emails, copied the Asia leader saying, hey, you don't have anyone in this group. We have some activities coming up we think you might be interested in. And I think we probably got 20 new folks in the group just from those. And the practice group leaders then responded to my email saying, welcome to the group. Ivan even set up, I think Ivan and Carla set up individual calls with some of the folks in the Americas region. So it does take a little bit of work on both you as a leader and me as the practice group manager. It takes a bit of work and outreach on our part to sort of identify those firms not participating. And if we've done that work, if we've exhausted those efforts and we see that we still only get 10 firms ever involved, that is something we consider. We're constantly reviewing whether these practice groups, make sense, either to merge into another group or to, abandon completely, which I don't think is the case. We've been doing business in series 1, and I think I sent you and Nath and Sasha the list of responses that we got. A number of them mentioned infrastructure as an opportunity for World Law Group members. And so I think it's just doing a little more handholding and a little more individual outreach on our part to actually get those folks involved. And they should want to be involved. And I think it's us sort of showcasing the benefits, talking about, how this group has benefited you and why you lead this group, to really get those others involved.
Okay, sure.
And I mentioned the doing business in series. So like I said, I'm jumping around the agenda just because that's sort of how the discussion is going. So I don't know, earlier this year, I think it was before the summer that we started this doing business in series. I don't even recall when we started this. But Tori has sort of really led the outreach on this particular series, where each firm has the opportunity to sort of write about what makes their firm stand out in the region, what the business development opportunities are for other World Law Group member firms are, that sort of thing. And we have a whole page now on the website, which I've linked to the agenda, called Doing Business In, and it's doing business in Argentina, doing business in Spain. And that is really the place where a lot of firms have identified very specific sectors that are ripe for business or investing from foreigners, that sort of thing. And so I think that is an opportunity for us to leverage and identify opportunities for discussion, for business development, et cetera, which, you know, we talk about in the Leaders Handbook as one of our jobs as the leaders of these groups to do. So if you haven't had a chance to look at this, I would just take a look, you know, click on a couple of countries. If there are specific countries, you know, for your group, just take a look at those. I have been trying to, for groups that, you know, have trouble getting traction, identifying those and sharing them. Juan was one of those, his group was one of those groups where I said, here, I copied and pasted all of the folks that have mentioned infrastructure. And, you know, again, this is something that we're putting into our database, so it'll be easy enough for us to pool and identify, you know, all the opportunities in energy, all of the opportunities in infrastructure, that sort of thing.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Any other comments? Okay, so we'll jump back to, actually, I'm going to stick with the website for now, and then we'll go back to the promotion of group activities. So the WLG website, all groups have their own page on the website, which right now is a little underutilized, and we're working on better utilizing those to put important information in that white sidebar. But if you log into the website, you have to log in with your firm login. At the top, there's groups and committees, and each practice group has its own page where we find, you know, if there's information on an upcoming event for the group, news items from our group members that have been tagged specifically to that practice area. There's a directory of members for the group, specifically for that group, which you can find underneath the practice group leader information on the right-hand side. And so those are, and there's also an email member. So if you click on the top, there's an email member. So I think each group has like privacy@theworldlawgroup.com, and that's everybody in the group that has subscribed to that group, that practice group leaders can use that to reach out to members. Lewis has done it with the cannabis group. We got a lot of folks respond. He just said, hey, here's what's happening, you know, in my part of the country. Does anybody else have anything going on? And everybody responded. And so we're working on putting all of those responses together in one format to share. As I said, we're updating the website. We will have a directory that will have literally everyone. So you can just go to the directory, you can sort by country, you can sort by firm, you can sort by practice group, you can sort by lawyer or non-lawyer. Which will be a lot easier for our members to be able to access who's in their group and who they can reach out to for specific things. The other thing we will have coming on the website, which I'm pretty excited about, and will take a little bit of work from me and from you as leaders to make them beneficial, are discussion boards. So kind of like if you think about like a Reddit type board, where you can go into your group and you can start a thread discussion on a specific topic. If you want others to weigh in, you can opt out of particular threads without opting out of the group. So you would still get emails from me, but you just wouldn't get the notifications that there was a new discussion board posted, which I think will be a really good feature for us to engage with our members once we have that up and running. And that will be sometime in early 2022. Any questions about the website pages? Okay, so I'm gonna hop back to item 4 on the agenda, which is promotion of group activities and World Law Group member firm activities. So, you know, we've talked about the amount of effort that it takes to do the outreach, to get folks contributing to guides and putting those together. You know, there's a lot of effort that goes into a guide, for example, from, you know, 3 different people proofreading it, from putting it together, you know, just collecting the information. Webinars as well, you know, you're taking the time putting together slides together, reaching out to speakers. We have a number of calls and dry runs beforehand. So a lot of effort goes into these activities that we do on the practice group level. And one of the things that I would like to see more of from the leaders and from the group members in general, but I think it needs to start with the leaders, is the promotion of group activities. So this is both internal in your firm. We don't limit involvement in our activities to any level of lawyer. So if you have associates that you think would find a group beneficial, or a webinar or a guide, sharing that with them, getting them involved in, you know, putting together the materials. And then the external social media is a big one. Most of our firms have LinkedIn accounts. I had Tori put together a directory, which I attached to this agenda. And again, I'll post on the practice group leaders page a list of all WLG firms LinkedIn accounts. So those are at the firm level. And then of course, you know, our speakers or your co-chairs, following them on LinkedIn. And when they have posted content, it sort of shows that we are not isolated firms, right? When you, Juan, are commenting on something that NAP has posted on LinkedIn, it really shows that we are all sort of interconnected. And I really encourage you guys to do that, to at least at the co-chair level, following each other on LinkedIn and engaging and liking a post or congratulating someone if they've won an award, or, you know, listening to a podcast that they've done. I think those are all ways that we can sort of really interact to the public, right? The other thing is Tori typically creates before a webinar. She has a lot of templates that we can use for sharing on social media, where you can just swap in your headshot or swap in your firm logo. And I would encourage you to be posting those on social media as well. Like, hey, I'm speaking at this upcoming, you know, interested, click the link below, that sort of thing. You can create your own text. You can copy and paste the text that goes from our post on LinkedIn, however you do it. You know, we as World Law Group do not have a client contact list, right? So social media is sort of our main go-to, and JD Supra in terms of reaching an external audience. You guys probably have a lot of followers that we don't have. And that also goes to your client list when it goes to sharing webinars and such. The invites that we create are forwardable so that anybody can click and sign up. I encourage you to share those with your clients, encourage your colleagues to share those with your clients. That is really where we're getting external folks attending our public webinars. Beth, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Did I miss anything there?
I don't think so. Just, yeah, encouraging people to use it and to engage with each other, as you mentioned.
And I know, like, the WLG staff team, I think we, like, my day is Thursday. I go on there more often than Thursday, but Thursday is the day every week that I make sure to go on social media for 30 to 60 minutes. I scroll through LinkedIn, I see what our firms are doing, you know, and for me, it's not just a great way to interact with our members, but to find out what they're doing. And a lot of times I'll send a practice group leader, you know, I've done it with Per, I've done it with Jonathan, like, hey, this is interesting. We should invite them to talk at a meeting, or we should focus a discussion around this. So it's also a really great way for you guys to see what your colleagues are doing around the world. So I would just encourage you, you know, even if it's just once a week for 30 minutes, for you to sort of going through LinkedIn and looking at what our members are doing. It's been really helpful for me. The other thing, you know, as I said, we rely on social media and JD Supra to reach an external audience. If there are publications that you subscribe to, or that you are able to send content to, if it's a webinar, if it's a guide, I would encourage you to do that. And also, you know, share those publications with me. I'm happy to start creating that list of the external publications that are important to you all. I just need to know what they are. So if there are, you know, places we should be posting, or, you know, reaching out to advertise something, let me know, because I would like to start keeping that list and help you guys getting the content that you've worked so hard to create out there. Okay, I think we're doing okay for time. The next thing I wanted to talk about was just sort of meeting best practices. You know, we talked about the agendas previously, and it's in the handbook. These agendas should really be to facilitate discussion, sharing best practices, building relationships. I mean, I don't know how many times we've had conversation and somebody said, oh, I'm traveling to this place, and then they've built that connection to go there. but really engaging all of the group members. And I think that's something that some of the groups are really great about and others struggle just because they're, not sure of how to do that. But I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. And we also need to use the agendas as a marketing tool. So we can say there's a meeting of the IPIT group, and that is so broad in what it covers. The group, a lot of these groups are very broad in what they cover. I think for us to really capture people to get there in the first place, we need to make sure that we're putting together agendas that are drawing attention, that will facilitate discussion, whether it's on one specific topic or a range of topics. And that's something just to keep in mind. And when I'm reaching out to you and pestering you for agendas, it's really for the benefit of the group and not just me trying to get another email in your inbox. So please be sure to respond to those. I try to get them out at least a week before the meeting, so that folks have time to take a look at it and see if it's something they're interested in. If they wanted to pull together some information that they'll share at the meeting, it gives them time to do so. We don't require anyone, when we invite somebody to speak on something at a meeting, it's not required that they pull together slides, but we have a lot of firms like our Asia firms, for example, it really helps them. I had a call with some of our Asia folks last night and they said, we like to do the slides because of X. That's perfectly fine. There's no requirement. And, when we're putting these agendas together, we shouldn't make it difficult for people to attend. They should feel comfortable coming and just, talking off the cuff for 5 minutes on a topic. And, I think that those types of conversations really facilitate discussion among members and really sort of naturally identify opportunities for folks to work together. The other thing I hear a lot of in meetings, and I just wanted to be mindful of the fact that practice groups, they are the way that we reach most of our members that are not key contact partners with World Law Group. The majority of our members in the practice groups are not key contact partners. We now have more than half of our practice group leaders who are not key contact partners. That being said, World Law Group will eventually get back to in-person meetings, hopefully in 2022. And a lot of you, I hear that are either KCPs or just regular attendees of our in-person meetings will say, when we can finally meet in person, or when World Law Group finally has a conference, we need to steer away from saying that, because the majority of the folks that attend these meetings don't attend our in-person meetings. They are virtual contacts for us. And I think it creates this exclusionary feeling for folks that I would like us to steer away from. Now, it's very different if Amalia says, hey, who's going to INTA, which is a very industry specific meeting that happens globally every year, that she or her colleagues or World Law Group colleagues that aren't key contact partners but that are part of INTA attend. That's very different, and I would encourage you to do that if you're attending an industry meeting, to say, hey, I'm attending X, is anybody else going? But when it comes to World Law Group meetings, I think we really need to steer away from when we can all see each other in person again, because it creates this sort of exclusionary feeling that I don't want members to feel that they have to go back to their KCP and say, should I attend this? And then, it puts key contact partners in an awkward position. Every firm has a very different policy in how they manage who they send to World Law Group in-person conferences. Sometimes it's very strict, just the KCPs. Others like to bring in a new colleague every year, every 2 years. And so that's just something for us to all keep in mind. And for those of you who are not key contact partners, it is not required for you to attend those in-person meetings. I should also be very clear about that. It is absolutely not required. If it's something that you feel would benefit you because of a particular agenda or location, that's something to take up with your key contact partners, but you are not required to attend in-person meetings. We really want these practice groups to be virtual and open to everyone, regardless of whether they see each other in person. Okay. Now I'm just finding where we are on the agenda because we popped around a little bit. Opportunities. So we talked about the Doing Business In guide. The other thing I wanted to talk about, which some of the groups have started doing really well, is cross-servicing and working with other practice groups. So I don't want our groups to work in silos, and I don't think they should. And, you know, Juan makes a really good point about the traction in the IP group. And there are some similarities or there are some crossover with the energy group. And I think that's true for all of the groups. There's at least one, you know, probably way more than one other group that you have a lot of cross work with. I know the restructuring and the corporate transactions group have worked together, you know, HR and privacy. And so this new board that was just elected in October, that's one of the things that they are focusing on is sort of collaboration across our groups and committees. And so I'd really like you to think about, you know, when I'm reaching out to you about a group meeting, you thinking, oh, you know, I just read this or I just worked on this, and it would be great to invite the IPIT group to join in this discussion. And a lot of times I'll do that myself if I see that there's something that's sort of cross-pollinating among groups. But I really like you to think about it. And what I would like you to do as leaders, maybe send me the top 3 groups that you'd like to work with. What are the topics that you'd like to discuss with those groups? If it's, you know, there's 5 groups you want to work with on something specifically. I know Srinath has been working on a template for a guide that touches, gosh, banking and finance, venture capital. What are the other? There are 4 groups that we ultimately decided it would make sense.
I think.
Yeah. So thinking about things like that and how we can really collaborate as multiple groups together, I would like you guys to consider. And, you know, if it's something that you think about now, drop it in the chat and I'll copy it and save it for later. But I would like us to start working together more sort of with other groups. Okay, I've got 2 more things I think that we have not discussed on here, and I think we will be right on time. So 2022 scheduling. We now have 17 practice and industry groups. I don't think that's where we're going to stop, unfortunately for me. So my plan for 2022 is to put, you know, at least 2 meetings per year. You know, I've talked to the venture capital group. They only want to do 2 meetings because they want to work on a guide. I think it is important for us to have some, you know, virtual face-to-face at least twice a year with these group members, where they can have discussions, that sort of thing. So my plan is to put together a schedule for 2022, and I will invite you to your group's meetings. If they don't work, we'll find a new date. But with 17 groups, I also work with the business development committee and the marketing folks. What I would like to do is just sort of put that calendar together. I know the dispute resolution group already in August sent me their dates for next year. And if there are specific dates or months you want me to keep in mind or avoid, let me know, because I plan to have that out scheduled by mid-December so that we can post that in January. So that's just something I wanted to make you all aware of. And like I said, just shoot me an email if there are specific months you know you can't do. The other thing I did not mention when it comes to sort of the leadership responsibilities, it's okay if your group has 3 or 4 leaders and only 2 of them can make it to the meeting. It happens all the time. Like, inevitably, we are not going to be able to accommodate everyone's schedule every single time. And so just keep that in mind. And, you know, if you can't attend the meeting in June and your other 2 colleagues have run the meeting, take on doing the meeting in September. And we have a lot of groups that just do that anyway. They just rotate through the leaders, all the leaders attend, but, you know, one will moderate the discussion in June, another will moderate a discussion in September. So don't think that we have to fit into everybody's schedule every time. It's not going to happen inevitably. And last minute, somebody always has a conflict. So I think as long as 1 or 2 of the leaders are there and running the meeting together, and sort of showing a united front, that's perfectly fine. The very last thing that I have on here, and it's a visual that I've attached, is the referral activity breakdown. So Tori put together, Tori does our referrals, our World Law Group referrals, and she broke it down by practice group. Keep in mind, looking at these, we just sort of wanted to share based on what members are reporting. We know that things are severely underreported just because when we do audits of particular firms, we audit. How many firms do we audit every year, Beth?
Probably about 10. And Tori and I were talking about this the other day, looking at the audits. I would say we're comparing, what firms are reporting versus what other firms are reporting they have sent to or received from them. And I would say the overlap is probably 5%. So it's
Low.
astonishingly low, which is positive in the sense that there's lots and lots of referral activity that we are not really getting our hands on, but we wish we could.
Yeah, and keep that in mind, because I know a lot of you are not key contact partners, and I think we've sort of pounded that into the heads of the key contact partners that, if they're making a referral within their firm, that they are clear this came through World Law Group. Just keep that in mind. So if you're a practice group leader and you're making a connection for a referral, just making sure that internally, however you guys track your referrals, if it's on client intake forms or whatever, that you're marking this was a World Law Group connection. And I think that's, a lot of folks are, they met through World Law Group 5 years ago, but aren't really thinking about the fact that that's how that deal came to fruition. So just keep in mind when you're taking a look at this breakdown, it's based on what's reported, which is obviously severely underreported. And we only have a handful of sectors that we're tracking, and a lot of things are sort of lumped in, so that will then break down to other various subgroups within those larger groups. But we thought it was interesting enough information to share. I think we used to, back in the day when we would have practice group leader meetings at our in-person conferences, I used to do a reporting of this every other meeting, which we don't do anymore because we don't do practice group. Now that we have so many practice group leaders who are not KCPs and we don't require them to attend, we don't usually hold that meeting anymore. But is it interesting information that I wanted to share with you all, and leads me to another point. So as I mentioned, we're redoing the website so that we'll have this better directory. We currently have pretty limited practice and industry areas on the website, and we're trying to be as inclusive without being, getting all of those little individual niche practice areas and sub-practice areas and that sort of thing. So Tori and I have put together a list of practice areas and industries that we think encompasses most everything. I plan to circulate that to you all, and what I would like to hear from you, and I'll put this in the email as well, is there something that we're missing that, yes, we absolutely have to have for somebody to check a box that that's a practice area? And 2, are there things that really just should all be lumped together? We don't need 2 separate areas for that particular practice or industry. And then the second thing to consider is, if we can do this, should we be breaking down practice groups and industries separately? So I will send that around in an email to you, likely before the end of this week, because we're moving pretty fast on the website build out. But that is something that I do want you guys to just take a quick look at and send me your feedback on. That is all I have on the agenda with 4 minutes to spare. Welcome, Harold. Does anyone have anything that I've missed or have any questions about anything?
Sorry for being so late.
We welcome. I called you out earlier in the merger control guide in a very positive way, Harold. So.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, a question rather, perhaps Hannah and Beth, when we were talking about these referrals, because I think, well, we all know that being able to show those numbers give incentives for people to actually, well, keep developing business and contacts within the group. Have you encountered any sort of best practices in how to do this? And just to give the example, I know that at our firm we have at least what should be a pretty solid foundation for tracking ingoing referrals, because we note them when we register new matters. We are poor, to be kind, on tracking outgoing. If you have come across any such best practice solutions, I think it would be welcomed and perhaps a topic for the Business Development Committee to actually look at.
Yeah, and I know we did a session on this a few years ago, 5 years ago now, in Poland, where we did talk about that. And I think it's definitely worth revisiting again, because it would be great if we all worked on the same, at least technology, right? Which nobody does. Everybody has a different technology for tracking. You know, I think back when we had this session in Poland, there were some firms who were just tracking on a spreadsheet. So I think it's worth revisiting again. And I have a meeting with Ignacio tomorrow. He's the Business Development Committee chair, and a meeting with the Business Development Committee next week. And I think that is worth revisiting, to see what firms are doing and how they're managing to capture those, because I know everyone does it a little bit differently and everyone's always looking for a better way to do something. So Per, that's a great question. I don't have an answer for you, but I would be happy to facilitate a discussion on that.
Yeah, thanks. And just for everyone, so that you don't think I'm particularly naive, I understand the challenges in that we are all using different administration and IT tools. So it's a difficult question, but yeah, thanks.
Excellent. Well, if nobody has any other questions, I will put together a recap and circulate to all of you, as well as your co-chairs who were not able to attend. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time and participating in discussion today, and we will be in touch.